Welcome to Embrace Joy, where we are walking the road to restoration. My name is Joy LaPiccolo. I am a certified life coach specializing in working with trauma survivors. And we have been talking about grief. So if you have missed some of the other episodes, go back. We talked about the loss of innocence, having grief over the loss of innocence. And we also talked about grief from domestic violence and grief related to a chronic illness. Today, we're going to talk about rejection. Rejection has happened to all of us since, childhood. And it can be one of the most painful experiences that we can endure, especially when we are rejected from our own family or even our children. The grief that we feel, it for me, it is overwhelming, especially when it might be related to trauma or a health crisis. So I'm not sure what type of rejection that you have experienced, but there's all types of different reasons why people reject us. And if we have gone through trauma, when we are rejected, it triples the effect. Maybe you have experienced that, but I noticed that with me. And so over the last 20 years, I have worked with a lot of women, and a lot of them have suffered rejection, either through divorce, through affairs, all different types of rejection. And what their stories have taught me is the importance of grace, the importance of healing from that rejection, not holding on to it, and then having faith that God is there with us through that hurt. So today I want to share with you a story. I'm going to say her name is Anna. Of course, it's not her real name, but Anna suffered from some rejection from her mom. And it was after a very significant health crisis. So with Anna, that rejection really challenged her faith, really challenged forgiveness and hope and all of those thoughts that were going through her mind. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about her journey and realizing we may not have control over another person's actions or words. And sometimes we may play a part in the rejections. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So, Anna was very vibrant. She was very outgoing, and but she was diagnosed with a very debilitating autoimmune disorder. And her once active lifestyle came to a halt, and her body began to weaken. She was a single mom in her 30s, and she definitely needed support. She had no idea how she was going to keep her job, keep her house. And again, her body was weakening every single day, was getting worse. So she turned to her own mother for help. Instead of receiving the support that she needed, desperately needed, she was faced with rejection. Her mother was overwhelmed by the situation, so she distanced herself from Anna, not only emotionally, but physically. Anna's health crisis seemed to be too much for her mother to bear. And over time, their relationship just was very distant and became very strained. Anna really struggled with the pain of that rejection for a long time. She had always believed that her mother would be there, especially during a critical time. And I'm sure you guys can relate too that we see our parents in that role. So when the support didn't come, Anna felt betrayed, abandoned, even feeling a little unloved. Her expectation of her mom's ability to care for her was shattered. Expectations were shattered. And that even deepened the grief that she was feeling. One of the first steps Anna took in her healing journey was lowering her expectations. She realized that her mother, like all people, was flawed and limited in her ability to handle difficult situations. The Bible reminds us in Romans 3:23 that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And this truth applies even to those who are closest to us. Now, lowering expectations does not mean giving up hope or settling for less. It does mean releasing the belief that others should meet all our needs. Let me say that again. Lowering expectations does not mean giving up hope or settling for less. It does mean releasing the belief that others should meet all our needs. In Anna's case, it meant accepting that her mother was unable to provide the emotional and physical support that she needed. By releasing her expectations, Anna was able to protect her heart from further disappointment. She placed her trust in God, not in her mom, because God is always present. Psalms 27:10, we find great comfort in these words. Though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will receive me. Anna found solace in knowing that God's love for her was unwavering, even when her mother's love felt distant. After facing rejection from her mother, Anna realized that she could not control how her mother responded to her illness. It took time, but Anna eventually came to terms with the fact that her mother's emotional limitations were outside of her control. And we've had that with other people that have rejected us. It's outside of our control. This point in her journey was pivotal. She realized that while she couldn't control her mother's actions, she could control her response. She could choose bitterness and anger, or she could choose grace and healing. Jesus teaches us to turn the other cheek, Matthew 5:39, not in a way that allows others to mistreat us, but in a way that allows us to rise above the situation with love rather than resentment. We need to focus on what we can control. Our response is something we can control. Anna decided to respond with grace rather than anger. She stopped trying to force her mother to be the kind of support system she needed. And instead, Anna focused on seeking God's comfort. She surrounded herself with friends who could help. We also can control our own healing. Anna chose to prioritize her emotional and physical healing. She began joining the support group, seeing a counselor as well to process the trauma, not only of the rejection, but also her health crisis. Because again, we talked about that in the previous podcast. There's a lot of grief that goes on when you have been diagnosed with a chronic illness. Anna started filling her mind with scripture, and that gave her strength as well. We also have control over our boundaries. Anna, definitely, we talked a lot about healthy boundaries. She still loved her mother, but she recognized the need to protect her emotional well-being. She stopped seeking approval from her mother and instead focused on creating a relationship with God and others. Again, not relying on her mom, because her mom was not capable of giving the support that Anna needed. God gives us the strength when others cannot. Now, as Anna worked through her grief, she began to wonder if there was anything she could have done differently in her relationship with her mom. Accepting responsibility when necessary is an important part of healing from rejection. It doesn't mean blaming ourselves, but it does mean being willing to look inward and ask hard questions. Are there steps that you need to take to accept responsibility? Their rejection is wrong, okay? How they reject you is wrong. But is there something that you need to take responsibility for? Anna took time to reflect on her relationship with her mother before her health crisis. And she realized that before she was diagnosed, there were already signs of tension, unspoken expectations, unresolved arguments. There were hurt feelings on both sides before anything happened with her health. Realizing the underlying issues, Anna was able to see that the rejection wasn't solely about her illness. We need to look and reflect on ourselves. Psalms 139, 23 through 24 says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Anna took that verse to heart. She asked God to show her where she might need to ask for forgiveness and maybe make amends. With this new awareness, Anna decided to reach out to her mom. She apologized for her own shortcomings in the relationship, even though her mother had not asked for forgiveness. This definitely was not an easy step, but Anna knew that God called her to make peace as much as it depended on her. Anna used this painful experience as an opportunity to grow. She learned to communicate more openly in her relationship and to set the healthy boundaries with her mom. The rejection was real, was deeply painful, but it was a catalyst for personal growth. For each one of us, the road to healing from rejection is not easy. And it could be tempting to just give up or deny that it actually happened, especially when reconciliation isn't possible or seems impossible. But I'm hoping that Anna's story will remind you of the importance being persistent in prayer and hope. Galatians 6:9 is another great verse. It encourages us with these words: "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Anna is an amazing woman. Yes, she's still ill, but she continued to pray for her relationship with her mother. And even though her mother remained distant, at times, yes, Anna felt like giving up. Reconciliation seemed impossible. Her mother showed absolutely no signs of changing, but Anna still held on to God's hand. God was with her through the hard times and still is today. Being very persistent in prayer is one way that Anna found peace. She also prayed for strength to endure the emotional rejection that kept happening. In Luke 18, Jesus tells the parable of the persistent widow to encourage us to keep praying, even when it seems like nothing is changing. So if you're not familiar with that story, Luke 18 is a great story to talk about the being persistent in prayer. Also, in order to have hope, we need to hold on to faith and faith in God's plan. Romans 8:28 says, "In all things, God works for the good of those who love him." Anna held on to this truth, trusting that God could bring beauty out of any situation, even if the relationship with her mother remained broken. Well, Anna couldn't force reconciliation. She kept the door open. She did not hold bitterness in her heart. She knew that God is a God of reconciliation, and she trusted that if it were part of his plan, healing would come in time. 2 Corinthians 5, verses 18 through 19 reminds us that God reconciled us to himself through Christ and has given us the ministry of reconciliation. This is an encouragement to Anna to never fully close the door. There is a possibility of healing with her mom. Reconciliation may not happen immediately, or maybe not even in the way we expect. But as Christians, we are called to strive for it. Anna learned that part of the reconciliation is forgiveness. Forgiving her mother was one of the hardest steps she had to take, but it was also the most freeing. Anna knew that holding on to anger and the resentment was really hurting her in the long run. And for those of us who have experienced chronic illness, we hold trauma in the body so that anger and resentment can actually cause us more physical harm. Anna, remembered about that Jesus says forgive 70 times 7. And that didn't mean excusing her mom's actions. Please understand that when we are talking about forgiveness, that doesn't mean that what they did was right. It does mean that we release the bitterness that is holding on to our heart. Anna has been praying for wisdom on how to have a relationship with her mom and extending the branch of reconciliation. And she's trusting God's timing. When the opportunity arises, Anna is going to be able to reach out to her mother with grace. And even if her mom isn't ready for reconciliation, Anna is still at peace, knowing that she has done her part to seek healing. Anna's story is one of pain and rejection, but also of healing and hope. The grief of being rejected by family is a heavy burden. I'm thinking of different rejections in my own life, and I'm dealing with a rejection related to my divorce. And so that burden, I can hold on to it with bitterness and resentment, or I can release it and hold on to the fact that there could be reconciliation later. We are not called to carry this burden alone. I pray every day for that reconciliation, for the opportunity for my son and I to be very, very close again. And we can release those burdens to Christ, and he promises to give us rest by lowering expectations, focusing on what we can control. Remember to accept responsibility for our own actions. Pursuing reconciliation. All of those, we can find peace in the midst of rejection. Our identity is not found in the acceptance of others. It is found in the unwavering love of God. He is the one who never rejects you. He is the one who always seeks to reconcile with us. Daughter of the King, I just ask that you hold on to that truth as we walk that road to restoration, as we walk through healing of that rejection. Now, there's different things that you can do as you go through this healing journey. One is to journal your expectations. Take a look at this week to write down what are your expectations of your family or your children? Are those expectations realistic? There's a friend of mine who, her and her husband at the very beginning of their marriage was really having a hard time. And he came to her and said, I am not God. I am your husband. And she realized she had put a lot of expectations on him that she needed to keep with God. And it was really eye-opening for her to realize how much she was putting on her husband. Her husband can only do what a husband can do. God is the one that meets all of our expectations. So, what expectations are you having? Are they realistic? Are you placing too much of your worth in their opinions, in their acceptance? It's important as you journal to reflect on how you can release some of these expectations and pray to God and turn those expectations over to Him. I encourage you to reach out to me as a trauma survivor and someone who has been educated in working with trauma survivors. I offer a 12-week life coaching program, one-on-one coaching, and there are so many things that we address. This is just one area with rejection and forgiveness and reconciliation and identity. And there's so many things that we dive into because I want you to have healing from the hurts and the heartbreak, including any type of rejection. I'm here to help you because, daughter of the King, you are worthy of being loved.